Hey everybody, new year, new day, new cow. Well, same old cow, and this is a cow's opinion, where we go over the latest and greatest in gaming news, and everything does not need to be argued about because it is a moot point. First of all, Microsoft makes the news again, but not in relation to Activision Blizzard, in relation to its other major acquisition that it made previously, as it recognizes its first union in Zenimax software. Now, Microsoft has recognized its first union of employees in the software maker's 47-year history. If you don't know, a union is where a bunch of people who do the same job or similar jobs all get together and bargain with their employer. In America, we have unions at like airlines, automakers, schools, and a lot of government agencies. But tech companies really aren't usually unionized because there's a lot of competition for them and they get really good wages and benefits for the most part. So technically they're already pretty fine with how things go for the most part. Now, other tech companies such as Amazon, Apple don't really want their employees to unionize. It's just not something that they're looking forward to. But Microsoft has always said they would support, and they're not really lying. In fact, one of the reasons why Microsoft taking on the FTC is such a big deal is because Microsoft has always been a pretty good government citizen and agreed with the government and what it said. So the fact that they're willing to fight for their acquisition of Activision Blizzard is a big deal. And last week, the Communication Workers of America said a supermajority of employees at Proletariat, a Boston-based game studio Activision had acquired, had voted to unionize. But now, Microsoft has its first one as quality assurance employees across multiple students at Zenimax, the publisher they bought in 2021, for $8.1 billion, are organizing with the CWA. Zenimax, of course, if you don't know, makes Doom, Fallout, Quake, and the Elder Scrolls. Now, in light of the recent results of the unionization vote, we recognize the Communication Workers of America as the bargaining representative for the quality assurance employees at Zenimax. Spokesperson for Microsoft and Zenimax wrote to CNBC. We look forward to engaging in good faith negotiations as we work towards a collective bargaining agreement. Now, supermajority said they want to join, and Microsoft, the rest of it is just the usual internal stuff. They have this, and the workers become the largest group of quality assurance testers at any U.S. games studio. What do I think of this? It's pretty good, but it's still not the thing that's going to move the needle. Look, all of the union efforts, at this place, at Raven Software, all of the unionization efforts are only taking place at the quality assurance level. People who are just getting their foot into the door or seen as paying their dues. Excuse me for coughing off mic because I am still a lizard man. The thing I can't talk about that was a global health emergency really likes to leave you little gifts for a couple weeks after you get over it. So it's good that these guys are unionizing, and I hope that it works out well for them. But you're not going to see true change in the gaming industry until the actual programmers and high-cost workers also unionize. And these guys just aren't as incentivized. I'm not saying I'm anti-game union, because I'm not. I'm saying that the people who would really make a difference in video games if they were to unionize are the people least motivated to unionize. They already get the biggest paychecks. They can move from studio to studio easier than anybody else. They're in high demand. I mean, yeah, a couple of places like Activision Blizzard are rumored to just be burning through them like garbage. But most game studios, with the exception of Crunch, which we do not like, but most game studios don't operate in continuous crunch, and they treat their workers pretty well. So the developers just don't have a lot of... I mean, they have the hours they want, they have their passion, and they're paid well for it. So they're not as motivated as quality assurance testers, people who usually have to put in longer hours, breaking games to figure out how to fix games, and are people just getting their foot in the door in the gaming industry. These guys and girls are a lot more motivated to unionize to protect themselves. But, like I said, any progress is good. So hopefully this will just lead into more stuff. And in our final story for this news update, I'm still a little sick, guys, so we're keeping it just to the really big and interesting news that's occurred. It's January. News is slower. Russian officials are considering a Russian electronic arts to save the country's crumbling games industry. This is from PC Gamer and Mr. Joshua Wollens. And there was a meeting December 15th with the Russian Ministry of Digital Development. And the government is trying to figure out how to save the gaming industry in Russia. If you don't know, Russia is doing a no-no, let us call it, to stay YouTube friendly, in Eastern Europe right now. And surprise, surprise, the world does not like it, with the West especially slapping huge sanctions on Russia. So they are having a hard time getting any kind of technology, trade, goods, weapons, anything. And that is a whole discussion for other channels that you can easily find. But in terms of gaming, one of the the country had originally had a plan for a national game engine. Basically like their version of Unity or any other major gaming engine that you know, where the Russian gaming industry could use it to help Russian dominance. But since that's not really working, they've decided that on December 15th to consider a project called the Gaming Industry of the Future. And one of the potential options was found a Russian electronic arts or just major game publisher to help streamline the release of high-quality Russian games. And by the way, the writer is amazing because he says, hey, the FIFA license is available. So Russian authorities want to make new institutions and new laws to help stabilize game development in Russia, which is not really, you've probably heard one or two really important breakout Russian titles, but you don't really think, you think of, for the most part, American and Japanese game companies, and then Ubisoft and other smaller publishers throughout Europe for games industry. One of the options is for industry regulation, research, and training as a Roscom, which is the Russian equivalent of like their NASA version of NASA. It's a center for the strategic development of the Russian games industry, which would focus on the regeneration and the development of, the industry, as well as the development of and publishing of games. Now, they laid out 3 possible scenarios. None of them are probably going to happen. The most likely one, which is stabilization, envisions a $7 billion investment to help the games industry recover, and Russia will enter the ranks of the top 20 game development countries by 2030. Then they had Ambitious, which is a $20 billion project, which would entail an industry breakthrough. And the Russians admit that they have no idea what even the essence of this breakthrough. Just, they would make a major technological breakthrough, which could work, but just saying that doesn't really help explain what you're going to use the $20 billion for. The really out there scenario is a $50 billion leadership scenario, where Russia would turn the game scene into a soft power tour to go toe-to-toe with the games industry titans by 2030. Soft power is just using more of your culture than your weapons or your economics to push your values and ideas onto others. Whenever you see like a Call of Duty game and the American is fighting to save the world, I don't think American game companies really care about soft power, but it is portraying the American soldier in a positive light. It's a form of soft power. Now, Dmitry, I'm not going to pronounce his name because I can, I'm sorry. Russia Deputy PM for Tourism, Sport, Culture, and Communications claimed that authorities haven't figured out how to fund any of it yet, and that extra budgetary mechanisms and measures will likely be the proposal. Now, apart from establishing Russian EA, they think that by 2030, which is in 7 years from now, Russian game development will have reached 1 billion foreign users, produced 4 Russian game. The plan to make a Russian game engine is on life support, but they think in the next 7 years they're going to make 4 of them, and somehow produced 2 new games consoles, when even if you started making the first game console today, you would be, and it had a minimum 2 to 3 years of development. 4 years is not the life cycle of a console. And this is also despite the fact that Russia is still subject to severe international sanctions following its invasion of Ukraine, and many game companies have already exited the country entirely. So they only have, look, there are some brilliant programmers and other people in Russia, except all the foreign international help is gone, and a lot of those brilliant Russians are in hiding or left after, the last 8 months. So the article concludes by suggesting, like a lot of other things that Russia has probably been trying to do the last couple of years, you can expect it to be scaled down dramatically or just frozen once they leave the offices. It is important, however, the author Joshua wants us to know, that games loom large enough in the minds of Russian ministers, not just as an economic sector, but soft power, to warrant multiple schemes to keep Russian gaming propped up. China has also been reassessing its hostility to games. I believe on this channel a few months ago we talked about how China was limiting gaming hours for its people to 2 hours a night, if that, to push their cultural influence, as the world's ongoing great power competition could impact our hobby more than it was. Because, China gets to censor things a lot less, actually, now. People are finally realizing that, it's really dumb to just play by another country's set of rules when you got the entire rest of the world. I know it's 1 billion people, but, even their movies are not allowing American-made films from Hollywood, because China makes Hollywood knockoffs that nobody wants. There was a recently knocked off Top Gun movie. It looked terrible. The acting was just so-so, but most importantly, the scenes of combat in the air put it to shame. They did not portray Chinese-made fighter craft well. But basically, this is just, I can understand why they're trying. Video games are seen as a major economic output. And like I said, it's a form of soft power. If you can have a bunch of positive Russian icons played by 1 billion users worldwide, yeah, it might change some hearts and minds, or at least help push you closer to positive Russia. But with the ongoing sanctions due to the little, let's call it an excursion in Ukraine, that should probably end sooner rather than later, because they don't need to be there. But in regards to that, not to mention also the fact that there's no foreign investment or help. All of the major companies were from Japan, the EU, and America, and they all left last year. There's just no way any of that's going to happen. And even if the most brilliant gamers in the world were in Russia, and they were 100% motivated, and they were ready to do this, Russia doesn't have $7 to $50 billion to spend over the next 7 years, and they most assuredly are not going to get 1 billion foreign users, 4 engines, and 2 new game consoles in 7 years. You'd be lucky to finish development on your first console in 3 to 5, I'd say, with it being at least good. But guys, that is it. Let me know in the comments below what you like, what you didn't like, what you're looking forward to in 2023. I am the Cow, and play more games, because games are awesome, and you deserve some awesome. I'll see you next time.